The clock on the wall of Bellevue restaurant showed 7:30 when Maya Thompson tied her black apron around her waist for another evening shift. The restaurant buzzed with the usual Friday night crowd, business executives celebrating deals, couples on romantic dates, and families enjoying expensive dinners. Crystal glasses clinked against fine china while soft jazz music played in the background. Maya had been working at Bellevue for 3 months now, and most people saw her as just another waitress trying to make ends meet. What they didn't know was that the young woman carrying their plates and refilling their water glasses had a Harvard MBA hanging on her bedroom wall and owned more money than most of them could imagine in their lifetime. After her grandmother passed away 2 years ago, Maya inherited Thompson Industries, a massive company that built hotels and office buildings across the country. The lawyers had set everything up in a trust fund that would fully transfer to her on her 25th birthday, which was still 6 months away. Until then, she had access to enough money to live comfortably, but she chose to work regular jobs instead. Her friends thought she was crazy. "Why are you cleaning tables when you could be running board meetings?" Her college roommate had asked during their last phone call. Maya always gave the same answer. She wanted to understand how regular people lived before she took control of a company that employed thousands of them. Tonight felt different somehow. Maya had learned to read the mood of the restaurant, and there was tension in the air. Table 7 had been occupied by the same group for the past hour, and their voices kept getting louder. She grabbed her order pad and walked over to check on them. 3 women sat around the corner table, each dressed in clothes that probably cost more than most people made in a month. The one facing Maya wore a white designer dress and had her blonde hair pulled back in a perfect bun. Her jewelry caught the light every time she moved her hands, which was often because she talked with dramatic gestures. "Excuse me, ladies, how is everything this evening?" Maya asked with her professional smile. The blonde woman, who seemed to be the leader of the group, looked up with cold blue eyes. "Finally, we've been waiting forever for someone to check on us. This service is absolutely terrible." Maya glanced at her watch. She had checked on them just 15 minutes ago. "I apologize for any inconvenience. Is there anything I can get for you right now?" "Yes, we need another bottle of the 2018 Bordeaux, and this time make sure it's properly chilled. The last bottle was warm, which is completely unacceptable for a restaurant of this supposed caliber." Maya made a note on her pad. She remembered bringing them the wine at the exact temperature the sommelier had recommended, but arguing with customers never ended well. "Of course. I'll speak with our wine steward right away." As she turned to leave, the woman's voice followed her. "And tell whoever is in charge of training that the staff here needs to learn proper etiquette. This isn't some roadside diner." Her friends laughed, and one of them added, "Victoria, you're so right. The help these days just doesn't understand their place." Maya's hand tightened around her order pad, but she kept walking. In 6 months, she would never have to bite her tongue like this again. She would be sitting in boardrooms making decisions that affected thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. But right now, she was just Maya the waitress. And Victoria was just another difficult customer. The wine steward, an older man named George who had worked at Bellevue for 15 years, shook his head when Maya told him about the complaint. "That woman has been here 3 times this month, and she complains about everything. Last week, she sent back a perfectly good steak twice, claiming it was overcooked when it was exactly medium rare like she ordered. Some people just like to complain," Maya said, though she was thinking about something else. She had dealt with difficult people before, but there was something particularly cruel about the way Victoria spoke to service workers. It was as if she enjoyed making them feel small. George prepared a fresh bottle of the Bordeaux, making sure it was at the perfect temperature. Maya carried it back to table 7, along with a selection of dessert menus she hoped would speed up their departure. Victoria examined the wine bottle like she was a professional sommelier. She nodded to Maya to pour a small amount for tasting. After swirling it around in her glass and taking a tiny sip, she made a face. "This is still not right. The temperature is off, and honestly, I'm starting to wonder if you people even know what good wine tastes like. Perhaps this establishment isn't as upscale as it pretends to be." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. She had watched George personally check the temperature with a thermometer. The wine was perfect. "Ma'am, I can assure you that our wine steward followed all proper procedures. However, if you're not satisfied, I'd be happy to bring you something else." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Are you arguing with me?" Are you actually standing there arguing with a customer? The restaurant was getting quieter as other diners turned to watch the scene unfolding at table 7. Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her, and her face grew even warmer. Not at all, ma'am. I'm simply trying to resolve the situation to your satisfaction. What would you prefer instead? Victoria leaned back in her chair with a smug expression. What I would prefer is competent service from someone who understands that the customer is always right. But clearly that's too much to ask in this place. One of her friends touched her arm. Victoria, maybe we should just pay and leave. The food was good and it's getting late. But Victoria waved her away. No, Linda, this is exactly the problem with society today. Nobody takes pride in their work anymore. Nobody understands respect and proper behavior. Maya took a deep breath. In her business classes at Harvard, they had studied customer service extensively. The key was to remain calm and professional, no matter how unreasonable the customer became. I understand your frustration, ma'am. Let me get the manager so we can resolve this properly. Oh, now you want to get the manager? After arguing with me and providing terrible service all evening? This is rich. Victoria turned to her friends with a laugh. Can you believe this? She acts like she's doing me a favor by getting her boss. This is exactly what I was talking about earlier. These people don't understand their position in life. Maya's jaw clenched. These people. The words hung in the air like a challenge. She had heard that tone before, seen that look in people's eyes. It was the same expression she had encountered in college when classmates assumed she was there on scholarship. The same dismissive attitude she faced when people learned she grew up in a modest neighborhood before her grandmother's business took off. But Maya had learned something important. During her time working regular jobs, the way people treated service workers revealed everything about their character. She had met millionaires who spoke to janitors with respect, and people living paycheck to paycheck who treated everyone with kindness. And then there were people like Victoria, who seemed to get pleasure from making others feel inferior. I'll get the manager right away, Maya said evenly. As she walked toward the back of the restaurant, she heard Victoria's voice carrying across the dining room. That's more like it. Maybe now we'll get some proper respect around here. Maya found the manager, Robert, reviewing receipts in his small office behind the kitchen. He looked up when she knocked on the open door. Everything okay out there, Maya? She quickly explained the situation with table 7, keeping her tone neutral and professional. Robert sighed and rubbed his forehead. Maya knew he was thinking about the restaurant's reputation and the online reviews that could follow a confrontation with wealthy customers. I'll handle it, he said, straightening his tie. You've done everything right. Some people just can't be pleased. But as Maya walked back toward the dining room, she had a feeling that Victoria wasn't finished causing problems. Something about the woman's attitude suggested she enjoyed creating scenes and making service workers uncomfortable. Maya had 6 months left of working regular jobs, and she was determined to finish what she had started. She just hoped she could make it through the rest of the evening without losing her temper. The dining room felt different when she returned. Other customers were still watching table 7, waiting to see what would happen next. Maya straightened her shoulders and prepared for whatever came next. After all, she had handled difficult board members and demanding investors during her internships. How much harder could one entitled customer be? Robert approached table 7 with the practiced smile of a restaurant manager who had dealt with difficult customers for over a decade. Maya watched from across the dining room as he introduced himself and began speaking in low, professional tones. She hoped this would be the end of the drama, and that Victoria's group would finish their evening quietly. But within minutes, Victoria's voice rose above the restaurant's ambient noise. Absolutely not. I refuse to accept substandard service just because you want to protect an incompetent employee. Other diners were now openly staring. A couple at the neighboring table had stopped eating their dessert to listen. The elderly man by the window lowered his newspaper. Even the bartender had paused in mixing drinks to watch the scene unfold. Maya couldn't hear Robert's response, but she could see his diplomatic gestures as he tried to calm the situation. Victoria's friends looked embarrassed, whispering to each other and glancing around at the other customers who were watching. Then Victoria stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Her voice carried clearly across the restaurant now. This is unacceptable. That girl argued with me about the wine, questioned my judgment, and showed complete disrespect for paying customers. Maya felt every eye in the restaurant turn toward her. Her cheeks burned, but she kept her expression neutral. She had done nothing wrong. She had been polite and professional throughout the entire interaction. But she could see doubt creeping into some of the other diners' faces as they looked between her and Victoria. Robert was speaking urgently now, probably offering discounts or free desserts to resolve the situation. Maya had seen this dance before during her months at Bellevue. Wealthy customers complained, managers appeased them with freebies, and servers were left feeling humiliated even when they had done nothing wrong. But Victoria wasn't interested in free food or apologies. She seemed energized by the attention, feeding off the uncomfortable silence of the other diners. She pointed directly at Maya. That girl over there needs to learn some respect. People like her think they can talk back to their betters without consequences. Well, I'm going to make sure she learns a lesson she won't forget. Maya's heart pounded. People like her. The words echoed in her mind as she watched Victoria reach for her wine glass. The restaurant felt frozen in time as Victoria lifted the glass of deep red Bordeaux. "Victoria, please sit down," one of her friends hissed. "You're making a scene." But Victoria was beyond reason now. She had an audience and she was going to make her point. "No, Linda, this is exactly what's wrong with the world today. Nobody learns respect anymore." Maya saw what was about to happen a split second before it occurred. Victoria's hand tilted the wine glass and Maya instinctively took a step back. But she wasn't fast enough. The expensive Bordeaux hit her squarely in the face and cascaded down her white button-up shirt and black apron. The cold liquid shocked her system, and she gasped involuntarily as wine dripped from her hair onto the floor. The restaurant fell completely silent except for the soft jazz music that continued playing, creating a surreal soundtrack to the humiliation. Maya stood perfectly still, wine dripping from her chin onto her uniform. She could taste the bitter wine that had splashed near her mouth. Her shirt was soaked through and she could feel the liquid seeping through to her skin. But worse than the physical discomfort was the shame of being humiliated in front of dozens of strangers. Victoria set the empty glass down on the table with a satisfied clink. "There, maybe now you'll remember your place." The silence stretched on for what felt like forever. Maya could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. She was aware of every eye in the restaurant focused on her, some with sympathy, others with curiosity, and a few with the kind of uncomfortable fascination people have when witnessing someone else's public humiliation. Robert looked horrified. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave immediately. This behavior is completely unacceptable." Victoria laughed, actually laughed, as if the whole situation was amusing. "Oh, now you want to throw me out? After I've been subjected to terrible service all evening? I don't think so. I want to speak to the owner of this establishment. I want that girl fired, and I want a full apology for the way I've been treated tonight." Maya finally found her voice, though it came out quieter than she intended. "Ma'am, I need you to leave the restaurant now." Victoria's eyes flashed with anger. "Excuse me. You're telling me to leave? After what you've put me through tonight? You have some nerve." She turned to address the entire dining room, gesturing dramatically. "Can you believe this? I'm the victim here and she's acting like I did something wrong. This is exactly the kind of entitled attitude that's destroying customer service in this country." A few people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Maya could see that some diners were buying into Victoria's narrative. They hadn't witnessed the entire evening's interactions. They had just seen a customer throw wine at a server. But Victoria's confident performance was making them question what had really happened. "I was simply trying to enjoy a quiet dinner with my friends," Victoria continued, her voice taking on a wounded tone. "I asked for properly chilled wine, which is a reasonable request at a restaurant of this caliber. Instead, I was met with attitude and disrespect from someone who clearly doesn't understand how to treat paying customers." Maya wiped wine from her eyes with the back of her hand. Her uniform was ruined and she would have to throw it away after tonight. More importantly, her dignity felt shattered. In 6 months, she would be running board meetings and making decisions that affected thousands of people. But right now, she was just a young black woman standing in a fancy restaurant with wine dripping from her hair, while a room full of strangers judged the situation. Victoria's friend Linda finally spoke up. "Victoria, I think we should go. You've made your point." But Victoria waved her away again. "No, I haven't made my point, not yet. This girl needs to learn that actions have consequences. She needs to apologize to me publicly in front of everyone here." Maya's hands clenched into fists at her sides. The humiliation was bad enough, but now Victoria wanted to force her to apologize for being the victim of an assault. Because that's what this was, assault. Throwing wine at someone wasn't just rude behavior. It was a physical attack. Robert stepped between them. That's enough. Ma'am, you need to leave now or I'll call the police. Victoria's mask of righteous indignation slipped for just a moment, revealing something uglier underneath. Fine, but don't think this is over. I know people in this city. I have connections you can't imagine. That girl will regret treating me with disrespect. She grabbed her purse and looked directly at Maya one last time. You should remember this moment. Remember what happens when people like you forget their place in the world. As Victoria and her friends gathered their belongings and headed for the exit, the restaurant remained unnaturally quiet. Maya could feel wine still dripping from her hair onto the floor. Her hands were shaking slightly, though whether from anger or shock she wasn't sure. The elderly man by the window was the first to break the silence. Miss, are you all right? That was completely uncalled for. A few other diners murmured their agreement, but Maya could also see people looking at their phones, probably posting about the incident on social media. By tomorrow, there might be videos of her humiliation circulating online. Robert approached her with a handful of towels from the kitchen. Maya, I'm so sorry. I never should have let it escalate that far. Why don't you clean up and take the rest of the night off? With pay, of course. Maya accepted the towels and began wiping wine from her face and hair. The Bordeaux had stained her white shirt a deep purple that would never come out, but the stain on her dignity felt even more permanent. As she walked toward the employee restroom to clean up, she heard snippets of conversation from various tables. Some people were expressing outrage at Victoria's behavior, while others seemed to be debating whether there was more to the story. Maya realized that no matter how professional she had been, some people would always assume the customer was right. In the restroom mirror, she looked at her reflection. Wine had stained not just her clothes but also her skin and hair. It would take a long shower to wash it all out. But as she cleaned herself up, Maya made a decision. Victoria had chosen the wrong person to humiliate. In 6 months, Maya would have the power to ensure that bullies like Victoria faced real consequences for their actions. For now, though she was just Maya the waitress, going home early on a Friday night with wine-stained clothes and a story she would never forget. But Victoria had made one crucial mistake. She had assumed Maya was powerless. That assumption was about to cost her more than she could possibly imagine. Maya stood in her apartment shower for 20 minutes, letting hot water wash the wine from her hair and skin. The expensive Bordeaux had left purple stains on her scalp, and she had to shampoo 3 times to get it all out. Her ruined uniform sat in a trash bag by the door. There was no saving clothes that had been doused in red wine. After changing into comfortable clothes, Maya sat on her couch and replayed the evening's events in her mind. Victoria's words echoed in her memory. People like you forget their place in the world. The phrase stung because Maya knew exactly what Victoria had meant. It wasn't about being a waitress or a service worker. It was about something much deeper and more personal. Maya pulled out her laptop and opened a new browser tab. She started with a simple Google search, Victoria Ashford. The results filled her screen immediately. Victoria was married to Richard Ashford, the owner of Ashford Construction Company. They lived in an expensive neighborhood and appeared regularly in the society pages of the local newspaper. The more Maya read, the clearer the picture became. Victoria was what people called new money. She had grown up middle class and married into wealth. Her husband's construction company had built several mid-level office buildings around the city, but they were always competing for bigger contracts with more established firms. Maya scrolled through Victoria's social media accounts. Her Instagram was filled with pictures from charity galas, expensive restaurants, and luxury vacations. But something interesting caught Maya's attention. Several posts mentioned upcoming business opportunities and exciting new partnerships that Victoria claimed to be negotiating. This was curious because Maya knew that spouses typically weren't involved in actual business negotiations unless they held official positions in the company. She made a mental note to look deeper into Victoria's role in her husband's business. The next morning, Maya made 2 important phone calls. The first was to Patricia Chen, the private investigator who had worked for Maya's grandmother for years. Patricia had helped the Thompson family with everything from background checks on potential business partners to investigating insurance fraud. Maya, I was wondering when you'd call. I heard about what happened last night. Maya wasn't surprised that Patricia had already heard about the incident. The private investigator had contacts throughout the city's restaurant and hospitality industry. I need a complete background check on Victoria Ashford and her husband Richard. I want to know everything: their financial situation, business dealings, legal issues, and especially any history of similar behavior toward service workers. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Maya, are you sure about this? I know you were humiliated, but sometimes it's better to just move on. This isn't about revenge, Maya said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Victoria mentioned having connections and influence in the city. If I'm going to take over Thompson Industries in 6 months, I need to know who I might be dealing with. Fair enough. Give me a week and I'll have everything you need to know about the Ashford family. Maya's second call was to David Rodriguez, the lawyer who managed her trust fund. David had worked closely with her grandmother and understood the complexities of Maya's situation better than anyone. David, I need to know if Thompson Industries has any current or pending business relationships with Ashford Construction Company. She could hear David typing on his computer. Let me check our current bid files. Actually, yes. Ashford Construction submitted a proposal 3 months ago for the new hotel project in the downtown district. They're one of 5 companies being considered for the contract. Maya felt her pulse quicken. What's the value of that contract? $12 million over 2 years. It would be the biggest project Ashford Construction has ever handled. According to our files, they've been very aggressive in their pursuit of this contract. Multiple follow-up meetings, revised proposals, even some informal networking events. This changed everything. Victoria's husband was actively pursuing a major contract with Maya's company, and Victoria herself might be using social connections to influence the decision. Maya realized that last night's incident had implications far beyond a rude customer throwing wine at a waitress. David, I want you to flag that file. Don't make any decisions about the Ashford bid until I give you the go-ahead. And I want to see all the documentation, their proposal, our evaluation notes, everything. Over the next few days, Maya continued working her regular shifts at Bellevue, while Patricia's investigation uncovered more details about the Ashford family. The private investigator's preliminary findings were revealing. Richard Ashford had built his construction company from nothing over the past 15 years, but he was heavily leveraged and constantly competing against larger, more established firms. The Thompson Industries contract would represent a major breakthrough for his business, the kind of project that could elevate Ashford Construction to a new level. More interesting was Victoria's role in the business. While she held no official position in the company, she had been actively networking with potential clients and their spouses. Patricia had found evidence of Victoria attending charity events and social gatherings specifically to meet the wives of business executives who might influence contracting decisions. She's been working the social circuit hard, Patricia explained during a phone call. Country club events, fundraising galas, exclusive restaurant openings, anywhere she might meet people connected to major construction projects. But the most damaging finding was Victoria's history of inappropriate behavior. Patricia had tracked down 3 former restaurant servers and 2 hotel employees who had experienced similar treatment from Victoria over the past 2 years. Each incident followed the same pattern: complaints about service, escalating demands, and ultimately verbal abuse directed at workers. One server at the Grandview Hotel said Victoria tried to get her fired after she couldn't accommodate a special request about table placement, Patricia reported. Another incident at Romano's restaurant involved Victoria berating a busboy for accidentally bumping her chair. In each case, Victoria used her husband's business connections to try to intimidate the management. Maya felt sick as she listened to these stories. Victoria wasn't just having a bad night at Bellevue. This was a pattern of behavior. She regularly used her perceived social status to bully and humiliate service workers, apparently believing that her husband's business success gave her the right to treat people however she wanted. The final piece of Patricia's report was the most interesting. Victoria had been specifically targeting restaurants and hotels that had connections to major business figures in the city. She seemed to be building a reputation as someone who demanded excellence and wouldn't tolerate substandard service, a reputation she could then use to impress potential business contacts. It's like she's performing, Patricia explained. She creates these public scenes to demonstrate her supposed sophistication and high standards. Then she uses those incidents as talking points at social events. You wouldn't believe the terrible service at such and such restaurant. Good thing I know how to handle these situations. Maya realized that she had been more than just a victim of Victoria's cruelty. She had been a prop in Victoria's elaborate performance of wealth and status. The wine-throwing incident wasn't spontaneous anger. It was a calculated demonstration of power, designed to impress Victoria's friends and reinforce her social position. As Maya processed all this information, she began to formulate a plan. Victoria had humiliated her in public, assuming that a waitress had no power to fight back. Victoria had also been using her husband's business pursuits to justify her cruel behavior towards service workers. Both of these assumptions were about to prove very expensive mistakes. Maya called David Rodriguez back with specific instructions. I want you to schedule a meeting with all 5 construction companies bidding on the downtown hotel project. Tell them the new CEO wants to meet personally with each firm before making a final decision. Maya, are you sure about this? Once we announce you as CEO, there's no going back to your anonymous life. I'm sure. It's time for people to learn that actions have consequences, especially when they treat others with cruelty and disrespect. Maya also asked Patricia to continue monitoring Victoria's activities. If Victoria was going to keep bullying service workers around the city, Maya wanted to know about it. And if Victoria was using her husband's business relationships to intimidate people, that needed to be documented as well. As Maya prepared for bed that night, she thought about her grandmother's advice about power and responsibility. Money and influence are tools, her grandmother had always said. The question is whether you use those tools to help people or to hurt them. Victoria had chosen to use her perceived power to hurt people. She had built her social status on the humiliation of others, believing that she would never face consequences for her actions. But Maya was about to teach her a very different lesson about how power really worked. In less than a week, Maya would reveal herself as the CEO of Thompson Industries. Victoria's husband would sit across from her in a boardroom, hoping to secure the biggest contract in his company's history, and Victoria would finally learn that the waitress she had humiliated possessed more real power than Victoria had ever imagined. The Grandview Hotel's ballroom sparkled under crystal chandeliers as the city's business elite gathered for the annual Chamber of Commerce Gala. Maya stood in the hotel's private suite, adjusting the jacket of her navy blue business suit. Tonight would mark the end of her anonymous life and the beginning of her public role as CEO of Thompson Industries. David Rodriguez knocked on the suite door. Maya, are you ready? The presentation starts in 10 minutes. She took a deep breath and nodded. Through the suite's window, she could see the ballroom below filled with hundreds of guests. Business owners, politicians, and their spouses mingled over cocktails and appetizers. Somewhere in that crowd were Richard and Victoria Ashford, expecting to meet the mysterious new CEO who would decide the fate of their company's biggest bid. Remember, David said as they headed toward the elevator. The board wanted this announcement to be dramatic. Your grandmother always believed in making memorable impressions, and tonight definitely qualifies. Maya smiled, thinking about her grandmother's flair for the theatrical. Elizabeth Thompson had built her business empire partly through shrewd negotiations, but also through an understanding of how perception shaped reality. Tonight's revelation would certainly be memorable. As they entered the ballroom, Maya scanned the crowd from behind the stage area. She spotted Richard Ashford near the bar, wearing an expensive tuxedo and speaking animatedly with another businessman. Victoria stood beside him in a glittering gold dress, her blonde hair styled in an elaborate updo. She was laughing at something her husband had said, looking completely relaxed and confident. Patricia Chen appeared at Maya's elbow. I've been watching the Ashfords all evening. Victoria has been working the room hard, introducing herself to everyone who might have influence over business decisions. She mentioned Thompson Industries at least 3 times in conversations I overheard. What did she say? Maya asked. She's telling people that her husband's company has an inside track on a major contract with Thompson Industries. She's claiming to have met with company representatives and received positive feedback. Maya raised an eyebrow. The Ashfords had never met with any Thompson Industries representatives. Victoria was fabricating connections to impress other guests. another layer of deception in her elaborate performance of influence and status. The evening's program began with dinner and several awards presentations. Maya watched from backstage as various business leaders gave speeches about economic development and community partnerships. Victoria and Richard sat at a prominent table near the front, clearly positioning themselves to be seen by the evening's speakers and honorees. During the main course, Maya observed Victoria's behavior toward the hotel staff. Even from a distance, she could see Victoria making sharp gestures toward their server, apparently dissatisfied with something about the meal service. The young server looked flustered as Victoria pointed at her plate and spoke with obvious irritation. "Some people never change," Patricia murmured, following Maya's gaze. "She's been complaining about everything all evening. The table location, the wine selection, even the temperature in the ballroom." Finally, the evening's master of ceremonies took the microphone for the final presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special announcement tonight. Thompson Industries, one of our city's most successful companies, is pleased to introduce their new CEO." The ballroom fell quiet as guests turned their attention to the stage. Maya could see Victoria leaning forward in her seat, clearly interested in learning about the person who controlled such an influential company. "Please welcome the new CEO of Thompson Industries, Maya Thompson." Maya walked onto the stage, her heels clicking confidently on the polished floor. The applause was warm and welcoming, though she could see confusion on many faces as guests processed her age and appearance. Most had expected someone older, probably someone who looked more like the traditional business executives they were used to seeing. But the most dramatic reaction came from table 12, where Victoria Ashford's face had gone completely white. Maya watched as Victoria grabbed her husband's arm, her mouth falling open in shock. Richard looked confused by his wife's reaction until he turned to see Maya at the podium. Maya began her prepared speech, discussing Thompson Industries' commitment to community development and ethical business practices. But she kept glancing at the Ashfords' table, watching Victoria's growing horror as the reality of the situation sank in. "At Thompson Industries, we believe that how people treat others reveals their true character," Maya said, her eyes briefly meeting Victoria's across the ballroom. "We look for partners who share our values of respect, dignity, and integrity in all their interactions." Victoria was now whispering urgently to her husband, who looked increasingly concerned. Maya could imagine the conversation. Victoria trying to explain that the new CEO was the waitress she had humiliated with wine just 2 weeks earlier. As Maya continued her speech, she noticed other reactions throughout the ballroom. Several restaurant owners and hotel managers were nodding approvingly, apparently recognizing her from her various service jobs around the city. A few looked surprised but pleased to see someone from their industry succeed in such a dramatic way. "We believe in second chances and personal growth," Maya continued. "But we also believe that actions have consequences. The way people treat service workers, employees, and anyone they perceive as having less power says everything about their character and values." By now, Victoria was visibly shaking. She kept looking around the ballroom as if trying to gauge whether other guests recognized the connection between Maya and their encounter at Bellevue. Several people at nearby tables were whispering and glancing between Maya and the Ashfords' table. Maya concluded her speech. With Thompson Industries' vision for the future and their commitment to working with partners who shared their ethical standards, the applause was enthusiastic, and several guests stood for an ovation. Richard Ashford clapped politely, but Victoria remained seated, her hands clenched in her lap. After the formal program ended, Maya mingled with guests at the reception. Business leaders introduced themselves and discussed potential partnerships. Politicians wanted to talk about economic development projects. Everyone seemed eager to make a good impression on the young CEO. But Maya's attention was focused on the Ashfords' table, where a heated discussion was taking place. Victoria was gesticulating wildly while Richard listened with increasing alarm. Finally, Richard stood up and began walking toward Maya, his face pale but determined. "Ms. Thompson," Richard said when he reached her, "I wonder if I might have a word with you privately." Maya smiled politely. "Of course, Mr. Ashford. I believe your company has submitted a bid for our downtown hotel project." Richard's face reddened slightly. "Yes, that's actually what I wanted to discuss. My wife just informed me about an incident that occurred recently, and I felt I needed to address it immediately." "What kind of incident?" Maya asked, though she knew exactly what he meant. Richard glanced back at his table, where Victoria was watching them with obvious anxiety. An incident at Bellevue restaurant where my wife behaved inappropriately toward a server. I had no idea at the time that the server was, well, that it was you. Maya nodded thoughtfully. I see. And how do you feel about your wife's behavior that evening? I'm mortified, Richard said honestly. I had no knowledge of what happened, and I want to apologize personally for her actions. Victoria sometimes, she gets carried away in social situations. She feels pressured to project a certain image, and sometimes she makes poor choices. Maya appreciated Richard's directness, but she was curious about something else. Mr. Ashford, has your wife been representing herself as having influence over Thompson Industries' contracting decisions? Richard's face went even paler. What do you mean? Several people have mentioned tonight that your wife claimed to have inside connections with our company. She's been telling people that Ashford Construction has special consideration for our projects. Richard closed his eyes briefly. I'll need to address that with her. Victoria has been enthusiastic about supporting the business, but she has no official role in our company operations. Maya could see that Richard was a decent man trapped in a difficult situation. His wife's behavior was jeopardizing not just their social standing, but potentially their business future as well. Mr. Ashford, I'll be honest with you. Your company's bid will be evaluated on its merits, your experience, capabilities, and pricing. But I want to be clear that Thompson Industries takes character very seriously when choosing partners. Richard nodded gravely. I understand completely. And again, I apologize for my wife's behavior. She will be apologizing to you personally as well. As if summoned by their conversation, Victoria appeared at Richard's side. Up close, Maya could see that her earlier confidence had been replaced by barely controlled panic. Ms. Thompson, Victoria began, her voice shaking slightly. I wanted to personally apologize for the misunderstanding at Bellevue restaurant. I was having a difficult evening, and I'm afraid I took my frustrations out on you inappropriately. Maya studied Victoria's face, looking for signs of genuine remorse versus calculated damage control. Victoria's apology felt rehearsed, as if she had practiced the words on her way across the ballroom. What specifically are you apologizing for? Maya asked. Victoria blinked, apparently not expecting to have to elaborate. For being rude to you, for raising my voice and causing a scene. Maya waited, but Victoria didn't mention the wine. She didn't acknowledge the humiliation or the cruel comments about people like you and knowing your place. Victoria was apologizing for being rude, not for assault or racial insults, I see, Maya said quietly. Thank you for the apology. Victoria looked relieved, apparently believing that a simple apology would resolve the situation. But Maya wasn't finished. Mrs. Ashford, I understand you've been telling people tonight that you have special influence over Thompson Industries' business decisions. Victoria's relief vanished instantly. I know, I would never. I was simply making conversation. You claim to have met with our representatives and received positive feedback about your husband's bid. That was a misunderstanding. I was speaking hypothetically about potential future meetings. Richard looked mortified. Victoria, what have you been saying to people? The conversation was attracting attention from nearby guests, who were beginning to notice the tension between Maya and the Ashfords. Victoria realized that her social performance was crumbling in front of the very people she had been trying to impress. I think, Maya said calmly, we should continue this conversation privately. Mr. Ashford, I'll have my assistant schedule a meeting to discuss your company's bid. We'll be making our final decision very soon. As Maya walked away, she could hear Victoria's panicked whispers behind her. The evening had accomplished exactly what Maya had hoped. Victoria's mask of sophistication and influence had been stripped away, revealing the insecurity and desperation underneath. Her pattern of bullying service workers and fabricating business connections was now exposed in front of the city's business community. But more importantly, Maya had sent a clear message about the kind of leader she intended to be. She would judge people based on their character, not their wealth or social status, and she would ensure that those who abused their perceived power faced real consequences for their actions. 3 days after the gala, Maya sat in the executive conference room of Thompson Industries, reviewing the final bids for the downtown hotel project. The room's floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city, including several buildings that her grandmother's company had constructed over the decades. David Rodriguez entered with a stack of files and a concerned expression. "The Ashford meeting is in 30 minutes. Are you sure you want to handle this personally?" Maya nodded, closing the folder she had been reading. "I've made my decision about the contract, but I want to give Richard Ashford a fair hearing. His company's bid is actually quite competitive. And Victoria? Patricia's investigation confirmed everything we suspected. She's been using these incidents with service workers as performance pieces to demonstrate her supposed sophistication. She's also been lying about her connections to our company for months." David sat down across from Maya. "The board is concerned about potential backlash. Victoria has friends in social circles, and she might try to spin this as discrimination or unfair treatment." Maya smiled grimly. "Let her try. Patricia documented every incident of Victoria's behavior over the past 2 years. We have witnesses from 3 different restaurants and 2 hotels. If Victoria wants to make this public, I'm prepared for that conversation." At exactly 2 o'clock, Maya's assistant announced the arrival of Richard and Victoria Ashford. Maya had deliberately chosen the smaller conference room rather than her grand corner office, wanting the meeting to feel professional rather than intimidating. Richard entered first, looking nervous but determined. He wore his best business suit and carried a leather portfolio containing what Maya assumed were additional materials supporting his bid. Victoria followed behind him, her usual confidence replaced by obvious anxiety. "Mr. and Mrs. Ashford, thank you for coming," Maya said, gesturing to the chairs across from her. "Please have a seat." Richard sat immediately, but Victoria hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the power dynamic. At the gala, she had tried to apologize from a position of perceived social equality. Here in Thompson Industries' boardroom, there was no question about who held the power. "Miss Thompson," Richard began, "I want to address the situation directly. I've spoken extensively with my wife about her behavior, and I take full responsibility for not being aware of these incidents sooner." Maya studied his face. Richard seemed genuinely distressed by his wife's actions, which suggested he might not have known the full extent of her behavior pattern. "Mr. Ashford, before we discuss your contract bid, I need to understand something. Were you aware that your wife has been representing herself as having influence over Thompson Industries' business decisions?" Richard's jaw tightened. "I discovered that after our conversation at the gala. Victoria has been enthusiastic about supporting our business development efforts, but she overstepped her bounds significantly." Victoria finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was just trying to help Richard's company. Sometimes I got carried away in conversations and exaggerated our connections." Maya turned to face Victoria directly. "Mrs. Ashford, you didn't just exaggerate connections. You fabricated them entirely. You told people you had met with our representatives and received positive feedback. You used these false claims to enhance your social status and intimidate service workers around the city." Victoria's face flushed red. "That's not... I never intended to..." "You never intended to get caught," Maya interrupted. "But the pattern is clear. You create public scenes with service workers to demonstrate your supposed authority, then use those incidents and fabricated business connections to impress people at social events." Richard looked shocked. "Victoria, is this true?" Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. Tears began streaming down her face as the weight of her deception became undeniable. "I just wanted people to respect me. Do you know what it's like being the wife of a small business owner in this city? Everyone looks down on us because we're not old money like the established families. I thought if people believed we had important connections, they would treat us differently." Maya felt a flicker of sympathy for Victoria's insecurity, but it didn't excuse her actions. "So you decided to build your self-worth by tearing down people who had even less power than you did." "I never meant to hurt anyone," Victoria sobbed. "I just wanted to feel important. Mrs. Ashford, you poured wine on me in front of a restaurant full of people. You told me to remember my place and made comments about people like me. That wasn't about feeling important, that was about making me feel small." Richard looked devastated as he listened to the full details of his wife's behavior. Maya could see him processing the implications not just for their business but for their marriage. Maya opened the folder in front of her. "Mr. Ashford, your company's bid for the downtown hotel project is impressive. Your timeline is realistic, your pricing is competitive, and your previous work shows solid craftsmanship." Richard's expression shifted from dread to cautious hope. "Thank you. We've worked very hard on that proposal." "However," Maya continued, "Thompson Industries has a policy of evaluating potential partners based on more than just technical qualifications. We consider character, ethics, and how companies represent themselves in the community." Richard nodded slowly. "I understand your concerns. Victoria's actions don't represent the values of Ashford Construction, but I recognize that her behavior reflects on our company's reputation." Maya appreciated his honesty. "Mr. Ashford, I'm going to award the downtown hotel contract to Morrison Construction. Their bid was slightly higher than yours, but their track record and reputation make them the better choice for this project." Richard's shoulders sagged, but he nodded acceptingly. "I understand your decision. I'm disappointed, of course, but I can't argue with your reasoning. However," Maya continued, "I'm not blacklisting Ashford Construction from future opportunities. Your company's work speaks for itself, and I believe you personally are an honorable businessman who was unaware of these issues. What would it take for us to be considered for future projects?" Richard asked. Maya looked directly at Victoria. "Your wife needs professional help to address her behavior. She needs to make genuine apologies to the service workers she's harmed. And your company needs clear policies about how family members represent the business in public." Victoria wiped her eyes with a tissue. "I'll do whatever it takes to make this right. I know I have a problem and I want to get help. Mrs. Ashford, I've been in contact with the servers and hotel employees you've mistreated over the past 2 years. 3 of them are willing to accept apologies if they're genuine and accompanied by meaningful action." Maya slid a piece of paper across the table. "I've also established a fund to provide conflict resolution training for hospitality workers who deal with difficult customers. I'd like your family to make a significant contribution to that fund." Richard looked at the suggested donation amount and nodded. "We'll make this contribution gladly. It's the least we can do." Victoria stared at the paper, finally understanding the full scope of consequences for her actions. "I'll contribute my own money as well. I want to make personal donations to each of the workers I hurt." Maya was surprised by Victoria's offer, but she sensed it might be genuine. "That would be appropriate, yes." As the meeting concluded, Richard stood to shake Maya's hand. "Ms. Thompson, I want you to know that Victoria is a good person who made terrible choices. She's been struggling with insecurity since we started moving in wealthier social circles, but that doesn't excuse her behavior." Maya nodded. "Mr. Ashford, everyone deserves a chance at redemption. But change has to be real, not just performed for social benefit." Victoria approached Maya hesitantly. "Ms. Thompson, I know you have no reason to believe me, but I am truly sorry. Not just because you're powerful enough to hurt my husband's business, but because I was wrong to treat you and others that way." Maya studied Victoria's face, looking for signs of manipulation or performance. Instead, she saw genuine shame and regret. "Mrs. Ashford, apologies are just words unless they're followed by changed behavior. I'll be watching to see if your actions match your promises." After the Ashfords left, Maya stood at the conference room window, looking out at the city below. In the distance, she could see Bellevue Restaurant, where this whole situation had begun. She thought about the other servers working there today, dealing with demanding customers and trying to maintain their dignity in difficult situations. Maya picked up her phone and called Patricia Chen. "I want you to keep monitoring Victoria Ashford's behavior for the next 6 months. If she reverts to her old patterns, I want to know immediately. And if she genuinely changes," Patricia asked, "then maybe her husband's company gets another chance to bid on our projects. People can change if they're willing to do the real work." Over the following weeks, Maya watched as news of the incident spread through the city's business and social circles. Some people criticized her decision to let personal issues influence business choices. Others praised her for holding people accountable for their behavior toward service workers. Victoria did follow through on her promises. She entered therapy to address her insecurities and behavior patterns. She made personal apologies to the service workers she had mistreated, accompanied by substantial financial contributions. Most surprisingly, she began volunteering at a local charity that provided job training for hospitality workers. Richard's business survived the loss of the Thompson Industries contract, and he began implementing new policies about professional conduct that applied to family members as well as employees. He also quietly spread word through the construction industry that character mattered as much as capability, when pursuing major contracts. 6 months later, Maya attended another charity gala, this time as the recognized CEO of Thompson Industries. As she mingled with guests, she noticed Victoria Ashford across the room. Victoria was dressed more modestly than before and was speaking politely to the servers at the event. When their eyes met, Victoria approached Maya with obvious nervousness. "Ms. Thompson, I wanted to thank you for giving me the opportunity to change. The therapy has helped me understand how my insecurities were hurting other people." Maya smiled. "How are things going with the volunteer work?" "It's been eye-opening," Victoria admitted. "Working directly with service industry employees has shown me how difficult their jobs really are. I'm ashamed of how I used to treat people who were just trying to do their work." As Victoria walked away, Maya reflected on the strange path that had brought her here. A humiliating incident at a restaurant had revealed important truths about character, power, and redemption. Victoria's cruelty had cost her husband a major contract and their family significant social standing. But it had also provided an opportunity for genuine growth and change. Maya realized that her grandmother's advice about power being a tool was more complex than she had initially understood. Power could be used to punish wrongdoing, but it could also be used to create opportunities for people to become better versions of themselves. The downtown hotel project was progressing well under Morrison Construction's management, but Maya had already decided that Ashford Construction would be invited to bid on the next major project. Everyone deserved a second chance, but only after proving they had earned it through genuine change and accountability. As Maya drove home that evening, she passed Bellevue Restaurant and saw servers in clean uniforms serving customers who treated them with respect. Some battles were won one interaction at a time, one person learning to see the humanity in others regardless of their job title or social status. Victoria had learned that actions have consequences, but she had also learned that redemption was possible for those willing to do the difficult work of genuine change. And Maya had learned that true power wasn't about dominance or revenge. It was about creating a world where everyone was treated with dignity and respect.